with the first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast. This is Dan Baker, accompanied by Evan Gooding and Lee Cook. This podcast is presented by Stadium Rant. Stadium Rant has tons of great content. Check out our YouTube page. We got league-wide coverage for all your teams and more. And shoot us a follow if you like what you see. On today's episode of Fantasy Rant, we will be talking about starts and sits of the week. We're going to go back into the fantasy gym, and then we're going to play the Wheel of Misfortune, probably for the last time this season. So
we might get one more in there. We might get one or two more in there.
Maybe we'll sneak one in for the Week 18 players out there. Let us know. Give us a comment if you guys got a Week 18 championship out there. If we got enough people interested in it, we'll definitely keep it at least 50-50 redraft. But we are going to start digging into some Dynasty content coming up soon. Really looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about we're going to bring up at least one player per episode, kind of do a deep dive on how they've been doing in college. That might be a couple weeks off, but really looking forward to getting into the scouting process right now.
New class looks loaded.
Yeah, man. I'm itching for another QB here, so I'll take what I can get. But to kick it off this week, some crazy news broke this morning. Very much impacting one of my championship games this week. Russell Wilson, he's going to be benched for the next 2 games. I had Tua carrying me basically into the playoffs. I've been streaming since then, knowing that he had some bad matchups. And Russell Wilson is the guy that I stashed 2 weeks ago, planning to play him against the Chargers this week, knowing that's a great matchup for quarterbacks. Now Russell Wilson will be benched for the next 2 games, and I'm looking around for some guys on the waiver wire. It is slim pickings out there. So we're going to talk about some guys that we could potentially replace Russell Wilson with. Lee, you want to kick it off for your Russell Wilson replacement if you need one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're looking to replace Russell at this point, you're probably pretty desperate. And for me, I'm leaning more in that super flex range because in a single quarterback league, you probably have better options than this guy. But I'm looking for the guy who's actually replacing Russell Wilson, Jared Stidham. He has a great matchup against the Chargers. Sorry, Evan. But he played well in limited time. I think he only started 2 games last year for the Raiders. Finished the season with like 656 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's a guy that can sling it. You know, he's been around the league for a while and not gotten a ton of opportunity, but he was very good in college. Like I said, he looked good against the Raiders. He looked awesome in the preseason for the Broncos. There was a lot of chatter. I remember that he was the best quarterback on the team and looked better than Russell, in the preseason games and training camp. So he's a guy that I feel like you could plug and play. We'll talk about it a little later. I'm considering putting him in over Joe Flacco in a horrible matchup against the Jets, but I don't know if I quite have the gumption to actually make that move.
That's tough.
Right. None of the guys out there are going to feel good starting in your championship week if you're forced into it, which leads me into my guy here. I'm literally in the situation, and I picked up Nick Mullins. He might not start. Obviously, Joshua Dobbs will be out there if you need him. I hope they don't go to Jaren Hall. If they go to Jaren Hall, I will not start Jaren Hall. I can't do that. It's a little bit too risky. But Nick Mullins or Joshua Dobbs, I'm perfectly fine rolling out. They got the Packers this week. If it is Nick Mullins, over the last 2 weeks, he's averaged 34.5 passing attempts, completed 24 of those, 357 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is averaging 3 interceptions. That's going to hurt, but he's willing to take shots downfield. The interceptions, they may hurt in the moment, but that's going to force them into more passing situations. Overall, it usually doesn't hurt quarterbacks too much if they throw a lot of picks and they stay on the field. Hopefully that would be the case for Mullins. The Vikings are still very much in contention for a playoff spot. So they have something to play for. As long as this game stays competitive and Mullins starts it, I think he finishes it. If they announce Joshua Dobbs as the starter, he's been risky for sure. Also has had some ugly games, ironically, after he's learned the entire playbook. Still don't understand that. If he's out there, he does offer some rushing upside. He now has a fully healthy Justin Jefferson. And one of the biggest reasons, honestly, I'm leaning this way, the Packers already over the last 8 weeks here, they are the easiest matchup against quarterbacks. And Jair Alexander, still weird that he got suspended for this game, but he is suspended. He's going to be missing this game. They don't have a great secondary or second option at cornerback. They traded away Rasul Douglas to the Bills. He's been doing well over there, but he's not on the Packers lineup anymore. He's not on their roster. The other cornerbacks have been graded terribly by PFF, not a single one over a 70 grade. And I think Justin Jefferson is going to eat. It sucks that Addison is probably going to miss this game. Hawkinson's definitely going to miss this game with news of the ACL, MCL tear there. But I do think that Osborne and specifically Justin Jefferson is enough to make Nick Mullins a interesting fantasy replacement for Russell Wilson this week. Evan, who do you got as a target this week?
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. The Jair news is crazy too. Like the reasoning behind that just doesn't make any sense. But my guy I'm bringing to the table, also not happy about it. The same with you guys. So this still doesn't feel good. But Mason Rudolph, they played Cincy last week or Seattle last week, and Cincy's a comparable matchup to Seattle in terms of difficulty. And then Pickens Pickens went off. Pickens got a ridiculous amount of points on my girlfriend's bench actually too. It doesn't matter. She still made it to the finals. But Mason was able to pick up 290 yards, 2 touchdowns against Cincy, and I think that Seattle opens the door to more opportunity to come. We don't have a ton of time to evaluate Mason, but based off this initial performance, I'd feel probably more comfortable than most of the other options, but I'd probably stick with one of the Vikings quarterbacks though if I had to choose between these. I think I'd go Mason over you guy there though, Lee.
Understand? So I got to ask though, you brought something up there. Are you playing your girlfriend in the finals, or did she make the championship and you did not?
No, she made the championship. I did not. Dan also did not. Dan didn't make the championship against her either.
I did not make the championship as well.
Yeah, so she's making both of us look bad. Maybe she's an avid listener, so maybe that's what it is. She's getting all of her feedback from all of us, and that's judgment from that.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago I should have started Terry McLaurin over DeAndre Hopkins. That is going to haunt me for some time here. Who knew that Jacoby would step in, on the final 2 drives and throw him over 100 yards in the TD there? If I knew Jacoby was stepping in, I probably would have started Terry. Just because, just the quick side tangent here. We saw Jacoby support Amari Cooper as wide receiver 8 last year. And that was with Deshaun stepping in with the final 4 or 5 games and looking ugly. Jacoby carried him to that fantasy finish. He will target the best wide receiver on that team, which is Terry McLaurin, and it's so frustrating watching Sam Howell be so good and yet not support any fantasy options out in the receiver room or tight end room, really. So
Curtis Samuel somehow is the only one.
Yes, right. And even him, he's kind of like boomer bust, kind of out of nowhere. Yeah. But Evan, to your point here, we got 10 out of the last 8 games, the Seahawks have given up 4 fantasy or 4 QB10. So top QB. I'm saying this terribly. Seattle has allowed a top quarterback 10 performance in the last 4 of 8 weeks. I think that Mason Rudolph can do that. I hate Mason Rudolph, honestly. I think there's a lot of drama going on between the Browns and Mason Rudolph for reasons we'll leave unexplained.
Keep the helmets on the head.
Yeah, helmets on the head for a reason, though. There's some comments. Myles Garrett heard some things said, and we will not get into that on this podcast. That's for another day. But Seahawks, they are an exploitable secondary here. I think you could do worse than Mason Rudolph. But again, none of these quarterbacks feel good starting. It's an ugly situation with Russell Wilson. Might be ugly for the Broncos in the upcoming years. I don't know if they're going to be able to get rid of that contract and be able to compete. I saw even if they cut him after June 1st next year, he is going to have a 35 mil plus dead cap. That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt them for quite some time. Might be worth getting rid of that contract in the long run, as he does have a $55 million cap hit the next 3 years after. But going to be ugly for the Broncos upcoming here. So let's move
It
on to
may
our starts and sits of the week. We got
real quick.
one at each position. So I'm going to lead it off here. I called it last week. Brock Purdy was my sit of the week because he was going up against the Ravens defense. This week, he is my start of the week. Sorry, Lee here, but he's got an easy matchup going up against the Commanders. I'm staying in the Flames. Outside of this last week, Purdy 25.68 points, 22.42 points, 29.46 points, and that's in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. He has been on fire outside of facing the most difficult defense against quarterbacks outside of the Jets. Right now, Washington's allowing the most points per game to the quarterback position. This game with Jacoby Brissett starting could keep it at least moderately competitive. San Francisco's been giving up a lot of points to the wide receiver position. I really think that could continue to happen. No, you don't think so? Lee's not about it, but I think that Jacoby can at least keep it interesting, keep Brock Purdy passing. My only worry is that they get to such a big lead so early that they really don't need Brock Purdy and maybe take him out of the game. However, if this stays even remotely competitive, with the 49ers coming off of that bad loss against the Ravens, I think they're going to play like they have something to prove. So I'm going to be starting Brock Purdy with confidence, and I'm going to be starting him over tons of other viable quarterback options here. If we are talking just this week alone, I am going to be starting Brock Purdy over Dak Prescott. Not Dak Prescott. Lamar Jackson up against Miami, even though he's got the rushing upside. I still like Purdy. Mahomes against Cincinnati, even though they also have something to prove. He has had a terrible year.
Mm-hmm.
And then also CJ Stroud in his first week back up against Tennessee. I'm starting Brock Purdy over all of those options right now. What do you guys think?
I just got it. You had me going with the Chiefs thing. I cannot believe Aiden O'Connell put up 2 points and beat the Chiefs. What the heck? What the heck?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how that happens at all. But
Yeah.
I love Purdy going into this, and I totally agree with the start. You know, I'm waiting to see Lee's reaction over there, though, as a Washington fan.
Oh, I'm on board, and you'll see with my pick. I'm on board. The defense is terrible. You mentioned Aiden O'Connell. Did I see that he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter or something crazy like that? There was something insane where I don't think he completed a pass after the first quarter.
Yeah.
That is
I mean, it went 2 points, and I don't think he had an interception either. Did he?
No, I mean they had Zaire had like 25 carries and a buck 25 or something like that. But I mean that's just an insane stat, and I could be getting that wrong. It's either not a completed pass or no passing yards. Maybe he had a backwards pass or something. I know it was something really crazy. But
Yeah.
Washington's just a sieve. I mean, like I said, I'm going to have a 49er as my start of the week as well. I feel like it's really dumb to start Brissett at this point. We really need to lose. We don't want to win these next few games. We need a top 3 pick. Sam Howell's, I mean, he's already in the fire. The confidence has collapsed. I don't think he rebuild his confidence by benching him. I don't know. Ron Rivera is on his way out, and I think he wants to have a 500 record or a 500 or above. He wants to win one of these 2 games and stay at 500.
That's going to be tough with San Francisco and Dallas next up.
Get him out of there.
Jacoby Brissett can get it done. That would be a wild story after all this time.
Yeah, right.
But I digress. We can kick it on over to Evan for his running back start of the week.
My running back start of the week is somebody I'm actually playing against in the finals. So not happy about it, but he does have his concerns as well. So we'll get into it here. I'm talking about Javonte Williams against my Chargers. So we already hit on it. We don't need to, hit on it even more, but the Chargers suck. They've been playing really bad defense and especially against the run. And they've never been able to stop the run historically either. So this is a historical issue. Now, Javonte Williams, he has not had a good past 2 weeks. They've been terrible, but he's still got the talent. The talent's there, and I think that he could be coming back just from his prolonged injury that he's had. And then I do believe in him going forward with the Chargers, though. The thing that I don't like, though, is the three-headed backfield. There's 3 running backs seeing 30% timeshare of splits. So I don't love that, but I do love his opportunity against his Chargers this week. And to pick it like a not so obvious guy, Javonte's it, and I think you fire him up.
I like it. I mean, it's a bit of a risky pick, just like you said, because of the timeshare. I'm going to throw out just a little curveball, and probably won't happen. It's left field, but Javonte's going to throw a touchdown pass this week, a la Derrick Henry.
What? How
That
many
is-
attempts does he have in his career? I'm going to look that
I
up.
feel like maybe a little bit of tie-in with Russell Wilson not getting the start. They go with
That's
some
right.
trickery. I like where your head's at.
I know he threw one at North Carolina in college. I don't know that he's done it in the pros, but I
don't think he
remember
had some in the pros.
distinctly him doing it at North Carolina.
You heard it here first. Javonte Williams, the Broncos 2025 starting quarterback. Oh, I said 25. 24.
Hey, if he does well enough.
All right, here we go, though. So I do like that, Evan. If I was to be doing the running back starts of the week, I also would have went Javonte. Again, kind of piggybacking on the whole idea of Jared Stidham getting the start. Going to
That
lean
too.
on the run game. The Chargers have not been good against either the run or the pass recently. So I do like that. I think that on top of it, with Easton Stick on the other side of the ball, likely that the Broncos get a turnover or two and flip the field position, something favorable for Javonte Williams. So I do like that pick a lot. But to send it over to Lee here for the wide receiver start of the week, who do you got?
So I already hinted at it, so it's one of the two, but I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk. I feel like I feel like any of your skill position 49ers, him, Debo, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, all of them are going to eat, but I just feel like it's going to be the downfield passing, the big plays, and there's a ton of holes. I mean, it's a Swiss cheese defense, but that's the most glaring. There's going to be at least one play where Brandon Ayuk is running downfield and there's nobody within 20 yards. I could just about guarantee it. The defense is mostly quit. They made Trevor Siemian look really good for the first half last week, and you're going up against a very angry Brock Purdy looking to prove himself after a horrible game, worst game probably as a pro. I think the 49ers defense is going to just beat Jacoby to death. I appreciate your confidence that they could keep it close, but I don't see it. I think this is going to get ugly fast. And knowing Kyle Shanahan and the way he coaches, I don't know that he calls off the dogs for a while. I'm looking for Brandon Ayuk to have at least 7 to 8 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. But I think they could all eat.
I completely agree with you. That was exactly my thought with Brock Purdy. I don't think he wants his team performing, firing on all cylinders, going into the playoffs. He's not even usually a guy that will rest his starters when they have it fully clinched. So I agree with you fully there. I think that he looks to play his player, even though they already have the division clinched. They'll run their players until the end of the game. They want everybody to be looking and performing at their best, even though this is going to be an easier matchup that I do think that they walk through a little bit. I really do think that they are going to keep everybody out there and trying to run up the score in this one.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, if I had both of them, I'd lean Debo, but this is a very for non-obvious choice. I really like that start of the week there.
Yeah.
If you have them both,
All right.
start them both.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah. That's quite the
All
step.
right. So this brings me to my tight end start of the week. I'm going with Dallas Goedert. Over the last 2 games, he's got 9 targets in each of the last 2 weeks. He's gone 7 receptions on 9 targets for 71 yards against the Giants last week. Dallas Goedert he's gotten an easy matchup this week. He's going to be taking on the Cardinals. The Cardinals over the last 8 weeks have been the 10th easiest matchup for tight ends. And the Eagles kind of in the same realm as the 49ers here. They have been not performing the way we would expect the Eagles to. They've lost 3 out of that 4. They only beat the Giants by 1 score last week. Kind of came down, not really to the last play, but they had a last-minute heave to the end zone to try to tie things up. I think in the same realm, really, they're going to try to get everything firing on all cylinders. And lately, that's going to be an easy matchup for the tight end position through or for against the Cardinals through the tight end position here. So I think Goddard stays in the flames, continues to produce. I like Goddard as a start this week, even despite him not having the best numbers outside of last week. So, like me some Dallas Goddard, I would be starting him over some other options like Darren Waller. This is the tough one to say because not to spoil too much, but George Kittle. I'm going to start him over George Kittle in one of my leagues here. I just think that we'll touch on it more later. We'll touch on it more with the George Kittle sit of the week here as to my reasoning. But what do you guys think of the Dallas Goddard start?
Oof. I mean, we'll see. He's also, spoiler alert, he's also on our wheel of misfortune, and you'll see where I have him ranked there. But he would not be my start of the week. He would not be my start of the week. That's for sure. And it's just because, like you touched on it already. Historically, he just has not been having a great season. It's been Devonta Smith as the clear number 2 option. And I have Devonta Smith in the playoffs, so I hope that stays. I hope that stays.
There we go. We got to the root of it.
There's the root. There's the root reasoning. But yeah, he just has not. I actually picked up Goddard in a lot of leagues, and of course there was injury, but he was terrible year for him so far.
I mean, I think a lot of it has been the injury, but I would lean more towards Evan. The Eagles just don't look right in general, and I would be scared to start that the clear third option in their passing game right now. I have a real life decision, and I haven't really given it much thought. Trey McBride versus Dallas Goddard in the same game in my most important dynasty league, and I'm smashing Trey McBride. I mean, I just I'm scared. I'm scared of Goddard. He could have some boom games, but he's a guy I'm looking to move in dynasty in the offseason.
That's interesting because we'll touch on it more because, like we said, we're going to be talking a lot about dynasty in the upcoming weeks. Dallas Goddard's a buy to me right now. He had the injury. I think that really took away a lot from his season this year. But we'll talk about that more in the upcoming weeks. For now, you know what? I'm going to skip over myself. I've been talking a lot here. Evan, let's kick it to your running back sit of the week.
Yeah, my running back sit of the week is going to be good old Raheem Mostert. And, it's odd because my reasoning behind this was because he doesn't see a ton of snap share. But my start of the week doesn't have a ton of snap share. Either way, he's banged up. Both the Dolphins RBs are banged up. They got an extremely tough matchup against Baltimore. Look what they did to that, 49ers defense or offense. But granted, that was not – there's CMC is an outlier. So they don't have a CMC on that team. Raheem Mostert is not a CMC, and he's going to struggle with his limited workload here against Baltimore and what I expect to be something that they're passing a lot too. So I expect A-Chain to get more snaps than Mostert this week.
That's risky to me. Lee, what do you think?
It's risky. I'm scared of any of the Dolphins this week, if I'm being honest. If you have Tyreek, you have to play him, but I don't know that you feel great about it. Not the way the Ravens defense looked. I know they played pretty good against Dallas for the win, but the Ravens defense is on an entirely different level. I don't know that I'd want I have to start A-Chain in one championship matchup because there's no other options, but if I had other options, I would probably move away. I am starting Mostert in one, and there's no real, better options that I have. But I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, I think it's risky, but like always, it all depends on your options. But I could see the Ravens rolling again.
What if they were your options, Mostert and A-Chain? Who would you start?
Mostert.
Oof.
Yeah, Mostert for sure. He's got the man has 18 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns on the season. If they score a touchdown this week, I think it's through the run game.
A-Chain's been hurt he's been hurt so many games, dude. I don't know. He saw more snap share last week. 55% A-Chain did.
And what did he do with it?
Not great, but
Not great.
and the
And
Baltimore's not great either. So I wouldn't want to start either of them either.
PPR leagues,
But I
and he
would
only had
rather.
the one reception. It's not like he's padding it through the receiving game here. But the Ravens are just such a lockdown defense. With this kind of leads into my sit of the week, which is Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback here. But they have no Jalen Waddle. Tua has a thumb injury that's made him limited in practice today. They said that he's probably going to start, so that's good news in a sense. You don't want to be rolling out who's their backup, the guy from the Jets last year, Mike White. You don't want to roll Mike White out and play when you're in playoff contention. But like they're good if they win this game, it's going to be through the ground, in my opinion. I think they have a secondary that can keep the Ravens at bay. I think that if they do this, it's going to be a defensively one game, a run heavy game for the Dolphins here. And, again, like Mostert has so many touchdowns, it only takes one to make your week. So I think it's a risky sit, but I get what of like I just talked about George Kittle as my sit of the week. I'm not saying sit George Kittle. I'm saying that temper expectations. If you don't have anybody else out there, if Dalton Kincaid's your backup because you picked him up midseason, I'm still starting Kittle over Kincaid. I'm just sitting Kittle over a lot of other viable tight end starters. There's a lot of good matchups out there this week. So that's one of the reasons why I brought my guy up, and that might be the same for Mostert for you. So just speculating here.
No, that the math adds up there. The math is mathing.
The math is mathing. And that, I'll just wrap up my sit of the week. Tua going up against Baltimore. A lot of the same reasons why Evan said, but like specifically through the passing game, they've just been so shut down. That was the reason why Brock Purdy was my sit of the week last week. That worked out with the 4+ interceptions plus getting benched. Really quickly too, Brock Purdy had a stinger. He's already cleared for practice. He's practicing in full. Good to go. But yeah, Tua over the last 3 weeks in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, 14.5 points, 12.9 points, 7.1 points. Terrible. Ravens are second against QB on the season. I'll pass it on over to Lee here. If you had anything to say about Tua, feel free. But if you would like to just, hit up your tight end wide receiver sit of the week, feel free to get started on that.
Yeah, one touch on Tua too. I am actually benching Tua for Jordan Love next week. So that's a scenario that I'm working on.
He's also got a tough matchup versus Minnesota, but Minnesota's been streaky.
I would play Love over Tua this week for sure. Like, I'm scared to death of that Ravens defense and that matchup.
They're so good.
I don't know if you guys saw it. It's kind of went viral in the last day or so, but Mike McDaniel, and it was mostly in jest, but he told Dan Marino they were coming to break all his effing records. And he may have just cursed himself because you don't talk ill to the great Dan Marino if you're in a Dolphins head coach.
That's wild.
Has he heard of a jinx? Has he heard of a jinx?
I mean, yeah, Dan Marino was my favorite non-Redskin as a kid growing up. I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks ever, and I just don't. Even if it's in jest, I don't think you disrespect that guy. But that's just me.
For sure.
So my sit of the week is going to be kind of in the same vein. We already touched on Aiden O'Connell. I took a peek at it. I can't find a completion after the first quarter. There may have been one. There's definitely none in the second half. He was 9 of 21 for 48 yards passing. So I would sit Devontae Adams in a plus matchup against the Indianapolis Colts with pretty much any top 30 option. And to me, I know you're saying, with you guys, we weren't saying maybe you don't bench Kittle. I'm trying to bench Adams if I can, and it could cost you a championship. It's a risky move because he is still a extremely talented wide receiver, but Aiden O'Connell is not a starting level quarterback in the NFL right now. This team, especially since Antonio Pierce has taken over, is committed to the run, whether it be Josh Jacobs or Zamir White. Indianapolis is susceptible to the run as well. I could see 35 rushing attempts for the team, at least 30. And I'm not trusting a wide receiver who has such poor quarterback play at this point. if I can help it. And yeah, I mean, Devontae Adams, I think he's still got another year or two of productivity, but I don't think it's going to be in Las Vegas.
I just fact checked your stat here. One upping not completing a pass in half. He didn't complete a pass after 2 minutes left in the first quarter. He went 9 of 11 in his first 11 attempts, and that did not complete a single pass after that. That is wild.
That's insane.
That is insane. I don't know
And
if there's
beat the
ever been a
Chiefs.
game
And
where
they beat the
someone
Chiefs.
won the game after not completing a pass after the first quarter. That is insane. Wow. Thank you for bringing that up because I just can't even believe that.
I mean, 2 defensive touchdowns, but still, I mean, wow.
Man, that is insane. So yeah, fully behind the Devontae Adams sit there. Man, who will the Raiders take next year? Another great segment for our dynasty weeks coming up here.
They're going to trade for Russell Wilson.
Interdivision trade. They're like, yeah, please take Russell Wilson in that contract.
Absolutely.
We're
And we'll give you a
begging
second-round pick. Just take them.
Just take him.
Both of them consistently make terrible quarterback moves, so not out of the realm. All right, so I touched on it earlier, but George Kittle is my tight end sit of the week here. Kittle is boomer bust, and he typically busts in the situations where they don't need him. They are going up against Washington this week, even though I said I'm very much expecting Shanahan to run out all of his players until the final whistle blows. I don't think that he's going to utilize George Kittle as like a must target receiver on this team this week. I don't think they need him against Washington. They're weak against wide receivers. I think they target that area of the field when they're passing and then just run Christian McCaffrey time and time again. Right now, George Kittle's worst games: Arizona twice, Seattle in a blowout win, Pittsburgh in a blowout win. Rams was close at the end of the game, but through most of the game, the 49ers controlled it. And then Cleveland was the only exception where they did lose the game, but their second toughest matchup against tight ends. So that's really the gist of it. On top of it, one last thing to throw in: Washington, second toughest matchup against tight ends over the last 8 weeks. They haven't allowed a single tight end to go over top 16 finish. So, it's a shorter sample size, but I don't think they need George Kittle, and really that's the only times they feature him is when they need him. Everyone's healthy. I think that they're going to be good to go and blow out the Washington Commanders here this week.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, Washington lost their best pass coverage linebacker. And when I say best, I mean, it's like the best cheeseburger at a fast food restaurant. It's not going to be very good regardless. But Jamin Davis was out. I think it was just 2 weeks ago we lost him. The Jets had Simeon, and Conklin isn't lighting the world on fire by any means. I mean, honestly, I think if the three of us go try out for linebacker at Washington, one of us is starting next week.
Let's go.
That bad.
Sign me up, baby.
So I would smash Kittle into the lineup unless I had a top 4 option on top, instead.
I don't mind Kittle. I mean, you're absolutely right with when they needed him. He last week they needed him and he popped off. So they do use him when they need him, and when they don't, they don't. But I just, after that performance last week, he might even he's just so dependable for Brock. He may need it.
Got to boost the confidence back up after such a bad game.
Yeah.
Before we
you have wide
transition,
receivers running free too, so that can boost the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before we transition into the fantasy gym, we got a question coming in. Bengueno2 YT says, in my championship, need 2 RBs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex. I'm not confident in anybody right now. RBs are Etienne, Saquon, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard. Wide receivers are Jamar Chase, Olave, Amari Cooper, and D-Hop. So I'll let you guys digest that. I was reading that a little bit. For the running back starters here, I'm definitely going Travis Etienne and Breece Hall. I think the Cleveland defense has been pretty weak against running back over the last few weeks. And then Travis Etienne going up against I believe it's the Panthers this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. That's right.
Panthers are bottom of the barrel in terms of run defense. especially with news that Lawrence might be out this week. I'm definitely thinking they're going to lean on Travis a lot this week. And then Brees Hall, he's always just one big run away from making his fantasy week. I'm checking it out right now on the fly. On the season, the Browns are 11th against the running back position. However, over the last 5, the Browns are 15th. So it's gone up a considerable amount. They've allowed the 25th, or I'm sorry, the 8th most points to the running back position to Houston. They allowed the 22nd to Denver, 16th to the Rams without Kyron Williams in that game. I do think that he's in a prime spot, especially playing in Cleveland. I haven't checked the weather report yet, but just with all of the targets heading his way, I'm confident targeting Brees Hall as a starter this week. For the remaining guys here, I'm definitely starting Olave. If Jamar Chase is good to go, I'm starting him, even though he's got a tough matchup against L'Jarius Sneed this week. And if I was to start one guy in the flex, I'm going Amari Cooper. If Chase is out, the one guy that I would replace here, even though it's a tough matchup, I would lean Saquon just because of the volume in comparison to the other guys here. What do you guys think? 2 wide
Have we got
receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex.
have we gotten any news on Chase? I haven't heard anything
I
that,
think he's
that
out
suggests he's
again. I
playing.
think he's like
Yeah.
not looking good. Like he's likely to sit this week. So that's why he was going to be one of the ones that I'm pretty sure I'm sitting.
Yeah,
Even
that's what
He missed
I
practice
agree.
today.
He did?
Yeah, it says Chase reportedly took part in the walkthrough but was sidelined at practice. He'll try to return to practice by Friday. They have a chance returning this weekend after he was sidelined this week.
Okay, so I feel like if he plays, you have to play him.
Yeah.
But where I would go, assuming he doesn't, I'm going Olave and Cooper as my wide receivers, same as you, Dan. And I would go. I'm playing Saquon. He's better with Tyrod Taylor in there. He's going to get so much volume. I'm playing Brees Hall. I would agree with you there, and I would play ETN. Those would be my 5. I can't trust Tony Pollard, and they've got the Lions this week, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to be a pass heavy game script. It has the highest over under of the week and of I think I heard a podcast talking about it as the biggest over under by a decent amount for the past half of the year here. But yeah, Etienne going up against Carolina, that's a lock. That's a
That
lock.
that's the only thing I was going to say to add to that. If Chase is in, I think I just go Saquon and Hall and I bench ETN because he's been so inconsistent. I'm worried about the Jaguars offense. So if Chase plays, I think I go 3 wide receivers with Chase, Olave, Cooper, and Saquon would be my lock out of those. And I put in Hall in a tough matchup.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement there. Sit Pollard, sit D Hop, and then if Chase plays, sit him as well. And then if not, one of those 2 RBs, either Etienne or Saquon. And I'd actually, it's a 50-50 for me. It doesn't feel good, but I'd probably sit Etienne as well. I'd start Saquon Hall.
Interesting. I really like Etienne this week. I think that he's going to be fed a ton, and Carolina's bad at stopping the D. Detroit right now, though, we all talked about sitting Pollard. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, that's not anything we would have considered, But over the last 8 weeks, the Lions are the number 4 run defense, not allowing a lot to the running back position. Only allowed 1 performance in the top 16, and that was to the Saints in week 13. Definitely think that I think that Etienne's surefire. I think Brees Hall, and just to wrap it up, Chase, Olave, and Cooper. If Chase doesn't play, I'm leaning Saquon. All right. So where did we leave off? Or no, we're going into the fantasy gym. In case you guys missed it last week, this is to get your flex right. We're getting your flex position bulked up here. We're going to be talking about and this week I made it a little bit slimmed down. Before we were going more like RB3, RB4, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. And this week we're in the championships. We got rosters that have guys that are locked and loaded. Most of these guys are probably going to be in your lineup somewhere. we got 12 guys lined up, 6 RBs, 6 wide receivers. We have James Conner at Philly, Joe Mixon at KC, Devin Singletary versus Tennessee, Chuba Hubbard at Jacksonville, CEH filling in for a most likely concussed Isaiah Pacheco going up against Cincinnati, Najee Harris with a plus matchup at Seattle, Amari Cooper, tough matchup Thursday night against the Jets, JSN against the Pittsburgh Steelers, McLaurin against San Francisco, Garrett Wilson, again, tough Thursday matchup at Cleveland, Calvin Ridley versus Carolina, and DeAndre Hopkins at Houston. Evan, I'm going to kick it to you first. Who do you got for your rankings here? Let's go top 6, and then we'll break it up into the bottom 6.
My top 6 here. So my number 1, I got James Conner. I'm starting James Conner. He's been consistent. He's been getting usage. I love the matchup against Philly. Well, I don't love it, but it's I think that they're going to have to try to put up numbers, and he's one of the only weapons that they can rely on. Then I got Clyde going up next, and then I got Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and then Garrett Wilson, and my caboose in the top 6, Devin Singletary.
All right, Lee, any big differences in the rankings here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that jumps out to me is you had Garrett Wilson at 5 or 4.
5.
I've got him at 11.
Okay.
I can't trust Simeon. Cleveland, they've been a little susceptible to the run, but not the pass. The pass rush is going to be all over them. They still have an outside. I mean, I don't know if they still have an outside chance at the division, but they're definitely going to the playoffs at this point. Actually, I think they do. I think I had read that they were the only other team that could potentially, overtake Baltimore other than Miami, assuming everything went right and wrong. But I agree. I've got James Conner at 2. I had Joe Mixon at 1 just because of how worn down the Kansas City defense looked in that second half, and there was no passing attack, as we've discussed, and the Raiders were still able to run the ball on them. I got Singletary up there. He's my 3. Amari Cooper I had at 4, even in a tough matchup. I mean, the best game of the year, definitely for a wide receiver. And I went JSN 5. Pittsburgh, I feel like he's going to get a lot of work. He's been coming on every game. And I had Chuba at 6, playing Jacksonville. Just volume. Volume is king.
Yeah, I was pretty similar. I also had Garrett Wilson ranked lower, down at 8. I have James Conner at Philly. Philly has been a tough run defense over the course of the season. However, over the course of the last 5 games, Philly is just 7th against the run. So I like James Conner here, especially if Marquise Brown misses. He's been getting more receptions, more targets with him out. CEH against Cincinnati, they have been terrible against the run. We saw Ty Chandler pop off against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. And I do still think that despite the Chiefs playing pretty poorly as of late, I think CEH being the only guy back there if Pacheco misses, which is likely, concussed on Monday. Not a lot of guys make it back on a short week. So I like CEH at 2. It's crazy. It doesn't feel right, but that's where I got him this week. Najee Harris against Seattle. They've been terrible against the run as of late, and Najee Harris is likely to fall into the end zone. McLaurin at 4 since Jacoby Brissett's likely to start. Been hyper targeting the top wide receiver there. I like him at 4. Amari Cooper, just like you said, Lee, he has been hot. He's our only true. Him and Njoku have been our only true targets that we can rely on. Amari Cooper at 5, and then Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, he's got a tough matchup against the Chiefs here, but it's going to be competitive. Joe Mixon's going to get some targets here, and he's their most likely player to fall into the end zone, especially if Chase doesn't start. So not too many differences here. I feel like Garrett Wilson was the big one there. But Lee, do you want to kick off the bottom 6 rankings?
Yeah. So bottom 6, I had McLaurin at 7. Just scared of the San Francisco defense as a whole. I know they've been susceptible to wide receivers. He'd have been much lower if Howell was starting, but he bumped up to 7 with Jacoby, and like you said, that's the first read for sure every time. I went CH at 8. I'm not as convinced as you that Pacheco won't play. If he doesn't, then I think CH does probably move up a couple spots. But for my own personal interests, I'm hoping Pacheco plays because I'm going to need him in one. Add
No,
Najee.
Evan's there with you.
He's not playing though. It was a Monday night game. He's got less time than normal.
Yeah,
We'll
I
see.
agree, but
The way they've
one can hope.
looked, I mean, I don't know. Well, he's probably not playing, but the way they've looked, they need him. And we'll see. Like I said, the concussion protocol has been up and down. I mean, you see some guys clear it and get back in the game immediately, and then sometimes it takes a little bit. Add Najee at 9. I don't believe in the Pittsburgh offense. I know it's a pretty good matchup against Seattle, but you got Jalen Warren. You've got Mason Rudolph, who could just throw up all over himself at any point. So I'm scared of it, but maybe he falls into the end zone. At Calvin Ridley at 10, Trevor Lawrence is just getting killed back there. Somehow the Carolina defense hasn't given up much to the receiving core or quarterbacks. A lot of that is how bad the run defense has been. Like I said, Garrett Wilson at 11, just scary matchup. Cleveland and Baltimore have the best two defenses in the league. Just eye test. So he's not somebody I want to play, especially with the quarterback they have back there. And then I went 12, DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's done.
I also have DeAndre at 12. It's tough, man, but Houston's been more than solid against the wide receiver position as of late. Will Levis questionable right now, probably will start, but I don't think that this is the guy you're looking to start in your championship lineup. So really quickly, and then I'll kick it over to you, Evan. I got Hubbard at 7 against Jacksonville. Jacksonville has been tough against running backs. Garrett Wilson at Cleveland at 8. Jackson Smith and Jigma against the Steelers at 9. Calvin Ridley against Carolina. Again, like Lee said, tough matchup against Carolina. I think they'll run the ball a ton, and then not having Trevor Lawrence most likely is going to hurt. Devin Singletary against Tennessee. This is the guy that I think has the most viability in almost the positive way, even though I have him ranked at RB11. He should have had a couple of bigger plays against Cleveland last week. There was a 30 to 40 yard run that was called back because of holding, then also a 30 to 40 yard screen pass that would have went. I forgot honestly what the penalty was on that situation. I was just cheering as a Cleveland fan that it got called back. But I think Singletary, he's been solid even against tough opponents. And then I got Hopkins down at 12 here.
Yeah, I got, as a D-Hop owner now, new owner, I got him at 7. So that may have something to do with my bias, but I don't think he's done. He's on the pace for 1,000-yard year, and he's going to keep getting 1,000-yard years year after year, I think, for the next 2 to 3 years. So that's why I bought him. But then I got Mixon, then I got Chuba, JSN there, and then McLaurin, almost second to Caboose. I know you don't love that, Lee, but sad but true. And then Najee as my actual Caboose. So, yeah, I just think
saying, it's a bold move to be buying D-Hop right now. It'll be 32 when the season starts next year, and history says that he is on a downward slope.
All right.
True.
That's going to bring us into the Wheel of Misfortune. Last week, it was just me and Evan. I'll just recap it real quick. Evan beat me based on his steal for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Still, oh, man. I was pleading for him last week, too. I was like, Evan, we're friends, man. Just let me have this one. Didn't let me have him. That was the difference in the matchup there. That would have been the swing between our wide receivers. Great week from Amon-Ra St. Brown. But because of time restrictions here, we're just going to dive straight into it. Our quarterbacks on the wheel this week, we got CJ Stroud at Tennessee versus Tennessee, Jordan Love at Minnesota, Geno Smith versus Pittsburgh, Derek Carr at Tampa Bay, Jared Goff at Dallas, and Kyler Murray at Philadelphia. If you guys missed it, Derek Carr was my quarterback streamer of the week. I think you guys should go out and get him if he's out there for you. We didn't mention him because it's likely that he's been picked up on the waivers. He was already kind of slim pickings before the waiver wire hit. But if you're running into that Russ Wilson scenario there, go and get Derek Carr. I'm sorry, Evan is going to be first up this week.
Yeah.
I ran
Mhm.
through
Who
the
gets the steal?
rankings. You can,
Dan gets a
not-
steal. Dan gets a steal this week.
yeah, I see
I mean,
that
I
pretty
didn't get
face
any
up there.
points last week.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
gonna
you
get the
didn't.
steal.
No points.
It'll go Evan, me, and then Lee, since Lee had to miss last week. Evan, you got Kyler Murray at Philadelphia. Do you keep or do you?
I'll keep this one. I don't mind Kyler there.
Yeah, they've been giving up a ton of points to quarterbacks and wide receivers here, so I don't mind that either. There we go. Derek Carr, talked about him, stream of the week. These are mainly streamer quarterbacks or guys that you're forced into because of matchups. I'm taking Derek Carr here. Swing it on over to Lee for his pick.
Do I get a replacement if he doesn't play?
These are
If he
literally my
doesn't
top 3
play-
rankings. We just all drew my top 3 rankings. Stroud, Kyler, Carr.
I'll take
That
him
is-
if I get a replacement if he doesn't play.
Yeah, no, you can get a replacement. You can get the next best points.
Off the
Well-
wheel? Or just give me a random one off the wheel. I mean, I'll take him
Let's
as long as
just-
I get a replacement if he doesn't play.
I was gonna say, let's just claim it now. Who would be your backup to him?
Love, I would say, is fair.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would do Love as the backup.
Okay, I'll list Jordan Love as your backup.
Yeah.
All right, so that kicks it over to the running backs here. For the running backs, we have Jonathan Taylor against the Raiders, Ty Chandler against Green Bay. We got Bijan Robinson at Chicago, James Cook versus New England, Breece Hall at Cleveland, and Javonte Williams against the Chargers. I'm going to spin this thing. Let's see where it takes us. Ty Chandler is my third ranked running back of this group. Green Bay's been bad against the running back position. I think overall they are going to be in beneficial field position with their defense playing as well as it has over the back half. And Jair Alexander not being able to stop Justin Jefferson. If Jefferson doesn't come up with big touchdowns here, I like Ty Chandler to finish off the drives. So I'm going to spin it again. We got Lee up next.
I'm good with all 5 of these guys.
Right? They're not bad options here.
Ty Chandler was at my bottom.
Okay. Well, we'll
I'll
see
say
how it
that.
goes, Evan.
I'll
This is
say
my
that, but
start of the week here.
I think Javonte would be my bottom out of those 5, and I don't hate your start of the week, but I'm gonna take the skip.
I like it. He's got another spin here, so we kick it over to Evan.
Bijan, my number 1. I'll take it.
Number 1. Wow. Chicago allowing the least amount of rushing yards per game on the course of the season. It's a bold move from Evan. I like it. I'm hoping he lands on the bottom of the wheel to end the season here.
They lead a good amount of points to the running back position, though.
All right. So, Lee, you have Jonathan Taylor. Where you? I mean, I guess you're stuck with him on this
That
one
would have
here.
been my pick of the 4.
That would have been your pick?
Yes, sir.
There you go. All right. So I'm going to kick it on over to Lee here to give us the wide receivers. Again, we won't rank them right now because we're short on time. But who was our wide receivers this week?
So we've got Nico Collins against Tennessee, Romeo Doubs against Minnesota, Tyler Lockett against Pittsburgh, Chris Olave against Tampa, Rashee Rice versus Cincinnati, and George Pickens against Seattle.
I like it. All right, you're going to be first up on this one. It's a good wheel to be first up on, I think. Come on, keep spinning. No, that was my top ranked.
He's my number 2.
Absolutely, we're taking him.
Okay. I was like, I'm not going to remove him unless he tells me to.
Yeah.
On the off chance I get
to
spin for him, I would love to take that opportunity. All right. So, Evan, you are up next since you won last week.
Okay.
Nico Collins.
My number 1 of the week.
There you and Evan, who do you have on your dynasty roster? Just out of curiosity.
Nico Collins.
Nico Collins.
Yeah, and he's gonna hopefully Stroud
We should give a precursor for all of Evan's picks.
Yeah.
Let him know who's on his dynasty roster here.
Hey, if you
All
tune
right,
in
so that
enough, you'll
brings
figure it out eventually.
yeah, stay tuned and you'll know who's on Evan's roster. All right, I got Romeo Dobbs. He is my last ranked. He's a little bit too touchdown dependent. There is an off chance that both Watson and Jaden Reed are going to be back this week. Minnesota, even though they've been tough in other areas of the field here, they have still given up a decent amount to wide receivers. I'm gonna pass here. I'm gonna spin again. I do have my steal, and let's see if I get a favorable matchup here. This is truly boomer bust. About as boomer bust as it gets.
Mm-hmm. You worth the steal or
George
no?
Pickens, great week last week. They said that Mason Rudolph is the starter. Ah, man, it's tough. I'm sorry to do it to you, Lee. I'm gonna go and stay. If you didn't watch the YouTube, go ahead and take a look at that. That was Lee chucking the hat across the room here. You do get another spin. If you want George Pickens, you can take George Pickens. But if you want a shot at Rashee Rice, Tyler Lockett, or Romeo Dobbs, you have that option.
Spin it. I want Rice out of those.
Spin it. Let's see how it goes. I think Rice is going to be solid. Another boom or bust option, but he has been seeing his. Oh, and there you go.
All
You
right.
ask
Wheel
and you
has
shall
spoken.
receive.
The wheel has spoken.
All right. So Lee gets Rashee Rice. We're going to be moving on to the tight ends. And Evan, kick it off with who we got lined up this week. Oh,
So
man.
for the tight ends, we got Dallas Goedert versus Arizona, Darren Waller versus the Rams, Isaiah Likely versus Miami, Jake Ferguson versus Detroit, Sam Laporta versus the Cowboys, Trey McBride versus the Eagles.
I like it. I like it. Let's spin it. See what Evan gets on his first one here. Evan, you still got his pass to go.
Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake will be passed on because he's my bottom two.
Wow. I personally have Jake Ferguson ranked as tight end 3. I think that this is going to be like with one of the biggest over-unders on the year. I think there's going to be a lot of targets to go around. All right, that leaves me with Isaiah Likely. Likely is actually my bottom ranked tight end this week.
Wow.
It's just yeah, I like Likely. I like the talent. I like the need for him in the passing game. And I do think this is another game where they can have a shootout is a potential. But with no Jalen Waddle, I think it's going to be more likely to be a defensively played game. And I was just actually looking at it. Jalen Ramsey, he plays slot corner more often than an elite cornerback does. So I think that with Zay Flowers being the only other outside wide receiver, so he has a above a 70% slot snap percentage from the outside. I think they go Howard on whoever is on the outside, and then sneak Ramsey in the middle to try to cover Isaiah Likely as the next best option on this team. So that's where I'm leaning. I'm passing on Isaiah Likely. Let's see who Lee gets.
Sam Laporta. One more time, baby. Let's
Oh,
go.
man.
Of
Let's
course.
go.
He's speaking to the wheel.
Wow.
He's whispering sweet somethings into the wheel's ear here. He gets Sam Laporta as requested off the wheel. Evan, who do you got for your next up here? We are
Oh,
stuck with these options.
no. Ferguson again. Are
Jake
you
Ferguson,
kidding
the
me?
wheel has spoken. I kind of wish it didn't speak to you here. I would have been taking Ferguson happily, but it is what it is. The wheel has spoken. I will spin it for one of the last 4 options here. Goddard versus Arizona, Waller versus Rams, Likely versus Miami.
Oh, and you get my
Trey
top.
McBride is the
Against
guy
my
who I
top
end up
two.
with against Philadelphia. I am happy taking him off the board here, especially if Marquise Brown misses. He didn't have a great week with Marquise Brown missing last week, honestly. But Philadelphia has not been great against the tight end position over the last 8. And I think that they're going to need to pass the ball a ton. So I'm happy taking McBride here. Only guys I would have taken above him are Jake Ferguson, who Evan got. So,
Wow.
it is
Who
what
was
it
your
is.
top? Ferguson was your top?
Ferguson was my third. McBride was my top. And okay, hold on. Let's see. Who got McBride?
Come on.
Why didn't I list them as McBride?
You got McBride.
Oh my God. All right, so that sums it up. I gave us a shot here to round out the regular season. I don't know if you boys got one, but if you got a drink lined up, let's rip a shot here. Cheers.
Modelo's.
Let's get these fantasy championships. Go out there, dominate your league, shoot for upside, leave it all on the table. That's going to do it for Fantasy Rant. Have a good one, y'all.
Good luck in the fun.
Championship, baby. Let's do it.
Playoffs.